Hello, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to dedicate my remarks today to my friend Brian Hall, who passed away this week. Brian was one of the leading developmental theorists on the planet, and I hope to be able to continue his work on applying values and consciousness into our most important collective life forms, the corporation. Without further ado, since this is a TEDx that's devoted to the hero's journey, I want to talk a little bit about a very unlikely hero, the corporation. And specifically, the latest evolutionary form that the corporation has taken, which is the benefit corporation. We're in the middle of a paradigm shift in the global economic system to a sustainable economy in which corporations will begin to act appropriately as responsible global citizens. Clearly, the corporation is at the center of this shift. At the same time, the biggest impediment to creating a sustainable global economic system is the corporation and the prevailing maxim that corporations exist solely to maximize profit for shareholders. Corporations don't have a conscience. Now, what do we do about this? Well, first of all, the profit maximization maxim has become the de facto conscience of every corporation in the entire global economic system. And this is not a proper, complete conscience. We've developed these social organisms that focus on maximizing profit for shareholders, and it's become acceptable for everybody in the business world to maximize profit for shareholders and voice the negative consequences of corporate behavior off on society and the environment. And as a result, we have a global economic system that tends to have corporations that are prone to periodic bouts of sociopathic behavior. And antitrust laws, environmental laws, labor laws, even Sarbanes-Oxley are all manifestations of society's attempt to provide some sort of an external conscience on corporations. But what happens is, with the profit maximization motive, corporations continue to find creative ways to maximize profit and violate natural law. So one of the things that happens is that corporations often export their jobs and manufacturing to foreign countries. You know, Apple Computer, for example, used to employ thousands of people in California in the computer industry manufacturing their computers. And like many US businesses, in the quest for maximizing profits, it has exported most of its manufacturing to China to take advantage of lower labor costs and other efficiencies in China. And as a result, well, we've all heard about what happens in. Yes, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So I'm just gonna sit and have a chat with you guys.
Can I tell you where you are?
Yeah. So essentially, what I was trying to say is that we've got a global economic system that's populated by corporations that don't have a conscience. And this is no accident. You know, we, the people in the American Revolution, never got to answer the fundamental philosophical question of what should the rights and moral responsibilities of our corporations be. We got rid of the king, but we inherited the feudal corporate form that was invented by the kings of Europe as an agent of empire. And this feudal corporate form was designed to conquer foreign markets and exploit them for the benefit of the royal treasury. And this is what corporations do fantastically well. They're designed to conquer markets and exploit the heck out of them. And they do this brilliantly. Now, when the King of England invented the corporation or used the corporation, it was an agent of empire. The last thing the king wanted to do was create a rival economic or political power. So the king served as the equivalent of the external conscience of the corporation. And if the corporation misbehaved, the king could simply revoke the charter. And this form continued forward. There was no need for a social and environmental conscience because at the time, the prevailing ethic was that man was here to exercise dominion over the natural world and nature and the environment, and that the native peoples in these new foreign markets were obviously heathens, and there was no need to really look out for their interests. So in the American Revolution, as I said, we got rid of the king, but this corporate form slipped into our mainstream. And in the charter function that the king had fulfilled devolved into our legislatures. And in the early days of the Republic, in order to charter a company, you had to get an act of legislation passed. And that provided a somewhat of a check and balance on the behavior of corporations, because the legislature would typically charter the corporation for a limited time with a specific public purpose, like building a canal or a toll road. And in 1811, New York State invented free incorporation and limited liability. And these two inventions revolutionized the corporate world, started the age of industry, which created 200 years of amazing prosperity and creativity in business. But what happened with those two inventions is that we separated the corporation from its external conscience as provided by the legislature. And all of a sudden, any human being who can fog a mirror can now incorporate a company. And there's no internal architecture to provide a social and environmental conscience. And as a result, through the last 200 years, whenever corporations have misbehaved, we have retroactive legislative action which imposes some sort of an external moral conscience or sensibility on the corporation. But there's still no internal conscience mechanism in the corporation. And we all know that something is terribly wrong in the global economic system. You know, we inherited a feudal institution, and of course we're going to get feudal behavior. So AIG, for example, received one of the biggest corporate bailouts from the federal government in history. And what happened? The management of AIG acted as though the corporation were an extension of their personal empires and paid themselves $180 million of bonuses 6 months after this bailout. And that may be technically legal, but all of us know that that is unconscionable behavior. So what do we do about it? Well, the corporation itself has been on a hero's journey. And I'm really happy to say that there's a global movement afoot to activate a social and environmental conscience within corporations. We're here in New York, which is really exciting. New York was one of the first states to adopt benefit corporation legislation. Benefit corporation legislation is the single most important development in corporate law since New York invented free incorporation and limited liability in 1811. Why? Benefit corporation legislation suddenly endows the corporation with a social and environmental conscience. And the beauty of this law is that it's incredibly simple. We use the existing common law and corporate code, and we build a tiny little application layer that's voluntary and it's opt-in that sits upon the existing body of corporate law. And this new legislation does two simple things. The first is it requires companies generally to provide a material positive impact on society and the environment from their operations taken as a whole, in addition to optimizing profits for shareholders. The second development is that these corporations require directors to expand the scope of their fiduciary duties to extend to all of the company's stakeholders, including employees, vendors and suppliers, the communities in which companies do business, society and the environment, and of course, shareholders. So what those two simple changes do is all of a sudden endow the corporation with the legal architecture that actually supports a social and environmental conscience. This is a big deal. In the 3 years since benefit corporation legislation has been passed, it's been adopted by 19 states. There are over 350 corporations in America that have adopted this form, and we're at the very front end of a revolution where the corporation is suddenly going to become a responsible global citizen. And I have a dream, which is, what if all 7 million corporations in America became benefit corporations? And what if all the corporations in Europe and across the world adopted equivalent corporate forms? We would have a very, very different global economic system. Imagine if every business operated with the golden rule and treated others, both its employees and society and the environment, in the same way that it wished to be treated itself. So this is the future, folks. You all have a choice. You'll have a choice to support the fading current economic system in which corporations exist solely to maximize profit for shareholders and foist as many of the negative consequences as they can possibly get away with on society and the environment. Or you can stand firmly with those people that have invented benefit corporations and build a sustainable and just global economic system where corporations actually have a social and environmental conscience and start acting responsibly as good global citizens. So thank you very much.